All right, we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm imagining people will be trickling in a little bit, so I'll just stall just a tiny bit here. So today we have Christina Ross and Kevin Kawai. All right, figuring out some technical things here. So we have two amazing marketers with here today. We're going to be talking about how to get from 0 to 1 million in followers, revenue with organic and paid acquisition. So this will be available recorded later in case you're coming in a little bit late. But otherwise, we will just jump in and I'll let Christina and Kevin take it away.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's great to be here. Hello to everybody. So welcome to 0 to 1 million with Kevin and Christina. We are here to teach you guys a little bit about organic and paid advertising and how you can kind of hit some of your goals. You know, we've worked with quite a variety of brands and backgrounds down here. You can see a couple of them, everything from those small startups to kind of larger corporations. We have some experience with in doing organic and paid advertising. So here is an introduction to creative advertising and what you can kind of expect from this webinar. So an overview of kind of the topics that we plan on covering, a how-to on creative experimentation, a breakdown of what you can learn from your socials, marketing for every budget size, and things that you should have done yesterday. So there are a couple of slides here where we encourage that you can screenshot, save for later, adapt. But yeah, we'll just get into things. So we're going to start with organic media. This is very much my forte. And we are going to be starting with the subject of social. So when it comes to social media, for quite a lot of brands, it can be a little bit of an afterthought. But I think that most of us know at this point that social is a really great opportunity to experiment with a blank canvas, especially with a brand new company. Now, social is great because, you can really utilize your opportunity to test content. It's all about testing. You can test with colors, you can test with layouts, topics, themes across various platforms, not just Instagram, but TikTok. There's so many places that you can test your social content. And the more that you test, the more that you can compare and the more that you can take away. Now, a high experimentation period, it allows you to discover three key things creatively. The first thing, if there's a particular visual style that works with your audience. So one of the great things about testing things visually is you can learn the habits, of your audience. What kind of styles are they attracted to? What kind of graphic design methods work the best for them? Second, the type of content or the value that your audience is most interested in. So, outside of the way it looks, what is it talking about? You can really learn a lot by, how interested people are in that. And number three, new ways to stand out amongst your competitors. So social is a great place to keep an eye on your competitors and figure out what you can do that's a little bit different without having to change your entire product. And with these kind of above key elements, you can actually build a very successful environment just based on creative data. And when it comes to creative data, it can really help you make better decisions, in your wider marketing. So for example, if you find that there's a particular style that works for you on social, maybe a more illustrated style, what you can actually do with that is you can hire designers or freelancers that meet that style and know that you'll have success. So you can be more concentrated in your decisions based on the creative data that you learn on social. So let's dig into a more specific example, because that was quite a vague explanation of the things that you can do. And here's an example of a previous case study that we have with The Fabulous, who we love dearly, and they have gone on to do such great things. But these are some of the common brand social hurdles that many companies face when they're first starting out. The first thing with social, Sometimes it's an unclear brand mission when you visit a page. It's not very clear, what it is that you're doing. And then as an example, this is kind of what Fabulous looked like before. They're a fantastic brand, but it wasn't very clear on their socials exactly what their brand mission was. Second, there was a lack of experimentation. I think that's definitely like an early problem that many people can face. They maybe just don't have the time to experiment, or they haven't thought about it deeply enough. But experimentation is obviously very, very important. Number three, ideas can sometimes take too long to turn into content for early stage companies. You have too much on your plate, and maybe you have a great idea, but to get it over the finish line, it can take a little bit of time. So the production process can definitely be a hurdle. A lack of community. Even if you have a community, with your product, it's difficult to kind of move them over, onto a social platform or start one from scratch. And lastly, another common brand hurdle is when you go to the page, there's no real reason to follow or engage with an account. Just because it's a business account or just because it's your business account, it doesn't necessarily mean that people will follow and engage with it. There has to be a reason there. So these are some very common hurdles that we see with people. And here is an example of a before and after with the Fabulous. So this is what they looked like before, and this is where we took it after, when we kind of overcame some of the hurdles that we just talked about. Now, what a social facelift can do for your business. I like to call it a social facelift. Now, the first thing it can do is it can really change perception of your brand and mission. Like I said before, when you visit a page and you can't see that immediate reason of that immediate mission, it can limit, the conversion into a follow. When we're looking at this example on the left, it's quite clear, what the brand looks like, what their general mission is to better yourself. And that really, really helped with the Fabulous. Number two, giving your feed clear value. So that kind of speaks into that first point, making it very clear, what value am I going to get from posting this from the audience perspective? And when we look at this feed, you can see that there are simple ways to unwind, very clear tips of developing a healthy mindset. It was very clear what value you're going to get from this social account. Third, an experimentation platform. I've probably said experimentation 100 times already, but the fact that you can use your platform to experiment and you can learn new things, it means that you can reach decisions quicker and you can understand what works for you better. The more that you experiment, the closer you get to the answer. Number four, a refined production process. So like I was saying previously, one of those common hurdles is the fact that, it just takes too long to go from idea to posting. And when you get good at social, when you get good at posting regularly and, the whole production process, that does benefit you in a greater sense in the company. Once you kind of establish what those milestones look like for production, on social, you can actually adapt them to other areas of your company that need help with creative. Another thing is you can develop a trusted audience that are not necessarily customers yet. They are an audience that you can actually use for conversion. If they're just interested in looking at your content, then you've got a really nice pocket of people there that you can dip into when you feel like it. Almost the last one, we've got brand personability. So just having a personable brand is really a big trend on social these days. I probably don't have to tell that many of you that Duolingo has really popped up just for being a really personable brand for a lot of people. And so you can play around with how your brand likes to speak to people. And with that in mind, the last point is it is a chance to stand out daily. Stand out daily from competitors, not just stand out as a brand, but what are you doing every day that's a little bit different from your competitors? And that is what a social facelift can do for your business. Now, we've looked at the feed in general, but one of the things that I get asked a lot is what to do with video content, whether that's TikTok or whether that's Reels or whether that's YouTube. I get a lot of questions about this. And this is about utilizing the power of video. Now, I'm sure everybody here knows video content is really important for a lot of brands on social these days. And video content is just always going to be there. It's always going to exist in one format or another as long as social exists. So there's so much value in understanding what is going to work best for your brand when it comes to video. The thing about video is that it can become very expensive very quickly, and it can become very, very complicated. When you have the discussion of video, you can immediately go to the place of animation, production company. It can get out of hand. But the thing is, when it comes to social from an early stage, some of the best results are actually coming from the videos that feel the most native, as opposed to the videos that feel the most professional. So unless you have internal capacity for animation, or you have a production team in-house, it's important to do more with simpler and more makeshift internal content. None of the TikTok videos that are going viral are shot on anything but a phone these days. So don't overthink it. Just get yourself out there and test. And here are a couple of examples of pieces of content that we've made that are actually quite scrappy, but they're very effective. All of these have either been shot on an iPhone or they're recorded video calls. So these are some examples of being scrappy with video. And this is one of those pages that I said you could screenshot for later. So this is just a very simple guide on the ultimate creative formula for experimentation. So if you want to experiment, but you're not sure how, these are the keystones I like to follow. First of all, how it looks visually. There are so many ways that you can experiment visually. You can experiment with font types, font sizes. You can experiment with colorways. You can experiment with layouts, and you can experiment with medium. So whether it's a carousel or a static post or a GIF or a video, there's so much you can do just visually. Then you can also experiment with copy. Basically, what is it saying? The tone of voice, you can play around with tone of voice. Do you want to be super friendly? Do you want to be super factual? You can play around with keywords. What words are you highlighting the most in your post or within the first 2 seconds of a video? The length, like whether it's the length of copy that you're seeing on a graphic, or whether it's the length of the script in a video, you can play around with length quite a lot. And the call to action. There are so many ways to do a CTA. And that's something else that we have experimented with quite a lot. And lastly, topic. So why does this post exist? That is so important whenever you're making your social pages. You can experiment here with the themes. What is it that you're touching on? What topics of interest are you trying to appeal to with your target audience? And what kinds of content have you got in your social calendar? So this is our creative formula for experimentation. And with that, this is our transition into the paid media world, which I'll hand over to Kevin soon. So the relationship between your social platform and your ads, I like to think that they're like a couple, okay? So they complement each other. They have their similarities, but they are most definitely not the same. They have different styles of communication. And it's really, really important that we understand this when it comes to organic and paid. So we cannot expect a well-performing social post to perform as an ad. We cannot expect a well-performing ad to perform as a social post. But what do they have in common? What we can do is we can observe consistent themes and topics organically. So the ones that do well, if they're touching on certain topics of interest. And what you can do with that information is you can restructure that for their relevant platforms. So by taking your creative learnings and developing them into your paid campaigns using social data, just finding a new way of saying the same thing. And with that, I'm transitioning over to Kevin to talk about paid media. So the mic is over to you.
Thanks, Christina. I guess one of the things that we always kind of think about, if you're especially from more of like an early stage organization, is there's a lot of different areas that you can focus on, right? So what areas do we kind of focus on first? For this, we kind of broke this out into areas that we can focus on if you have no budget, low budget, as well as a large budget. So obviously, a little bit of pieces for this is that the size of the budget may affect the growth of the organization. So paid being the highest budget, you potentially could see the highest growth there. Marketing and working on organic things socially, organically may drive little impact, but also it costs minimal to no money for these type of marketing efforts. Can we go to the next screen? So marketing if you have zero cash. Next page, please. Depending on the product, if you have an app, ASO could be an option for you to kind of figure out how do we increase the conversion rate for App Store. So this can include the App Store slides, the metadata, as well as the keywords that you select within the metadata, the title, etc. So the idea is that when we do have more individuals coming to your product pages, we have the highest opportunity of converting those people into customers of your product, right? So we always kind of want to work on the things that we can work on organically to increase those conversion rates. The alternative, if you have a website where people can register for your product that way, SEO may be a good opportunity for you to work on to see if you can drive users to your page organically. So this includes, some of the kind of just basic infrastructure stuff, such as, getting your page indexed, working on the technical pieces of, making sure that your site loads, quickly, it's mobile friendly, those type of things. And then additionally, kind of just making sure that you start to build your domain authority, getting some additional, sites onto interwebs to start, backlinking to your page as well. Again, just to kind of build some of that domain authority, and then potentially start to increase your ranking organically within the search results to potentially drive some people to your site organically. So this one kind of ties in pretty closely to a content strategy. Again, content, SEO, ASO, they tend to be no cost type of marketing activities. So thinking about content, obviously this will kind of want to align with some of the keywords that you may want to rank for organically for SEO. So content, examples of content could be, developing a blog around specific keywords that you're trying to rank for. It could come in the form of, how-to guides, trending topics, listicles, etc. And then kind of just as Christina mentioned, this is a good opportunity for organic and paid media marketing to work together in harmony because within the social pages or the organic posting or the paid media, you could drive users via those avenues or direct those users via those avenues to your blog site to get additional views that way. This would obviously work well for a product that has additional touch points or takes additional consideration for before an action is taken, such as like a sign up or a registration. I know we live in an era of AI now. So I want to kind of point out one of the interesting ways of the use of AI for SEO that I've seen recently. So this was a card playing app or a card playing site. And then one of the ways they were trying to rank for some specific educational keywords was basically taking somebody's YouTube video that talks about some educational pieces of playing cards. And they were taking that and transcribing it into a text form onto their website. So the website included all the specific keywords that came from the YouTube video. The site was getting indexed. They started to see a bunch of their pages rank for these keywords within the search queries or search results. So that was pretty interesting to see. Obviously, this one was like, again, no cost type of situation, but it had a pretty sizable impact in terms of how they were ranking for some of these educational keywords. So not saying this will work for everyone, but especially with Google kind of cracking down on some of these AI-driven content pages, but it was still interesting to see. One thing I want to kind of just point out too, so moving on to product. This one is not necessarily marketing per se, but I like to stick it in here because there's kind of just a piece of here that is kind of marketing from a user level rather than, I guess, from the brand level. So the idea here is how do we kind of just turn our existing users into advocates for our product. So like take, for example, if you have an online course that you're trying to sell to individuals, one option could be is how do we get more, users to utilize our product, but again, turn those individuals that currently use our product into advocates for our product. So one thing is obviously getting those individuals to share the course or the content within their network or social networks. So I guess one option here would be, how do we get those individuals to share the content? So it could be, hey, we'll give you the content for free for 7 days if you get one person that you share the content with to register. And then conversely, if that new person gets additional people to register or sign up and view the content, then they get additional 7 days of free content within our product. So it kind of just has that more of that compounded network effect of getting more and more people to view the content based on kind of just referrals. And then ultimately, obviously, the goal here is potentially some of these individuals may convert and monetize within the product and ultimately buy the course. So moving on to, I guess, budgets, if you have just a minimal amount of cash. So emails here, I think is always important. This is one of the core channels, I think, for any kind of marketing program. So I think that the idea here is that you can always have more of measurable results with some of your email sequences. So the idea here is, obviously we want to nail down the content and the sequence for a welcome series. So when somebody signs up for your product, how do we educate them to get the most value out of the product, as well as nudge those individuals to potentially, subscribe to your product, purchase your product, those type of behaviors. So one thing I always kind of look for is, how do we identify some usage behavior trends from product analysis and see what activities individuals take that correlates with a high value user. So if somebody's kind of just browsing specific pages of an e-commerce site, add specific things to the cart. And then the idea here is after we have that analysis, how do we develop a first-time user experience that encompasses those features? So in that welcome email, maybe a suggestion would be, hey, come check out these most popular items. And then again, just more, nudging those users to interact or take specific behaviors based on those usage data. So I guess for the email sequence, in addition to, just the welcome series, we could always kind of think about, some of the longer term, I guess, journey or projects of, how do we potentially identify people who are going to churn, and then, develop a win back strategy for those individuals. A lot of this could be kind of just based on kind of just a general churn bucket, but if you have more of the resources, you can always kind of think about developing a little bit more comprehensive, something that's based more so on personal usage rather than kind of just a general churn bucket. But the idea here is when you do have those additional resources, we obviously want to identify users who are at risk of churning rather than who have already churned. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. Moving on to affiliates. So affiliates is, again, for more of like I have this marked as like low budget technically. There's probably no budget for this one as well. But I like to put it as low budget because there is some legwork that's kind of involved with starting this program. So this will probably be more geared towards products that have higher LTV. So if you have a higher LTV, takes additional touch points consideration, this may be a good option to start exploring to see if third party, may send qualified users to your site or app. If affiliates is a good option for you, it's also a good time to kind of think about how do we incentivize our existing user base to provide the referral codes to the networks and so on. Again, going back to starting an affiliate program, this does involve some type of legwork. So this includes, trying to determine, what kind of payouts that we want to provide to the affiliates, monitoring and, analyzing your performance, especially for organic users. Does this affiliate traffic increase, and then at the same time our organic traffic decreases? So kind of just looking at those for those type of things. And then additionally, thinking about, program policies, and then additionally managing those affiliates as well. There's some third-party sites out there that can help kind of just manage some of these items. But again, that would be kind of just like a low-cost situation.
And then we're going to move on to partnerships. So partnerships are a really interesting thing. I mean, it really has the capacity to contribute not only to your brand, but your brand credibility. And there are so many different ways that you can, work with certain partnerships. You can do giveaways, you can take it a little bit further. But one of the key things I think is a great thing about partnerships is having access to collaboration, being able to collaborate with another team that has their own data that you can kind of dip into, and being able to have access to their resources. So maybe they have an internal marketing or creative team already, and together you can come up with a lot of different ideas. And that's certainly one of the key benefits to a partnership. Like I say, credibility, who are you partnering with? You can both help one another elevate, whether it's through reputation or whether it's through, following when you're doing some kind of giveaway together. There are so many ways that you can both be credible to one another. And lastly, I think that one of the things that is really important is just the art of relationship building with other brands. That in itself is marketing. Word of mouth can go a really long way when it comes to, making friends with other businesses. So partnerships is just a really, really strong way for you to find a marketing avenue through a low budget. And lastly, you have PR. So PR is this great thing because with 0% budget, you need 100% pitch skills. That is the one thing that you do need to have a successful free PR campaign. Now, PR, again, really great for brand reputation. If you are covered by a certain publication, or if you are covered by X amount of publications, that definitely makes your company look quite good, as long as they're saying nice things, of course. The second thing here that you'll get is organic traffic. There are a lot of brands that just get a lot of their customers from, their exposure on a certain platform. So there's a whole lot of benefit there for certain articles going live, or even, certain social accounts mentioning you. And lastly, authentic coverage. It's one of these unique areas of marketing that exists because people actually like what you're doing, or they actually believe in what you are doing, or they found some kind of angle that differentiates you from your other competitors. So this authenticity with PR can be a really, really great thing if you can tap into it. And we'll move into when you have a lot of cash, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at scale really quickly, obviously paid acquisition could be a good opportunity for you to scale quickly. I guess the question is, how do we think about, when is a good time to start running paid acquisition, right? So some things I kind of just like to ask myself or, the organization is, get a better sense in terms of, what are the existing product metrics look like for organic users, right? So this could be a leading indicator for potential paid performers or paid performance. Although it's not a one-to-one kind of correlation, it's obviously a good proxy. So thinking about what are some of the existing conversion rates for organic users within each step of the funnel. So it could be somebody who lands on your website for the first time to registration. It could be from first visit to purchase. You can obviously do some type of back of the napkin math here to understand kind of just projected CACs or LTVs, et cetera. And then I think for most products, with the exception of maybe e-commerce, one of the core metrics here will probably always be kind of the retention piece. So, do your DAUs, daily active users, or MAUs, monthly active users, increase as organic users increase, or are they just replacing the organic users who churned? So obviously we want to kind of see that those users kind of increase as the number of users to your site or app increase. So we always want to think about paid as a complement to your market strategy, not an over-reliant channel. In an ideal world, we probably see, paid to organic ratio of 1-to-1, but starting out as probably a new product or a new brand, that ratio will probably be much higher for paid acquisition. An exception of this obviously could be if you're doing a lot of product testing and you just need more traffic to your product for that product funnel or product testing. That ratio would probably be driven up quite a bit higher in that sense. Some other things to kind of think about too before kind of running the paid program. Do we have domain expertise? So do we have somebody on the team who knows how to run paid acquisition? So does this person understand the media buying process, the integration of traffic sources, the paid metrics lingos, and then additionally how to optimize those campaigns. And the other parts from a supporting team is trying to understand or trying to have the resources to support that paid acquisition program. So with data, this could be somebody who understands the complexities of attributing performance, since we live in a more kind of privacy-centric world. Obviously, if you're probably starting a paid program, you'll probably only start with one channel, which makes this analysis a little bit easier. But as you start to grow and add additional channels, the complexity and data analysis becomes a little bit more intricate. The additional kind of teams that could be involved with the paid program, engineering, obviously there's going to be some things around the technical infrastructure or setup. So this can include things like connecting APIs, SDKs, pixels, etc. And then the creative team, right? So as kind of Christina mentioned, the creative piece is going to be pretty important for any kind of paid acquisition program. And then the last and most important piece here is cash flow. So paid acquisition is going to be a very capital intensive program. So do we have the run rate to support this this program to continue to support this program? And hopefully the idea is that the revenues outpace the ad media spend, or you can forecast our budget for that accordingly. Next slide. So the idea is, so after you kind of gone through that analysis is, how do we think about where do we start for a paid program, right? So the idea here is more is less, or less is more, sorry. The idea is we want to start with 1 or 2 channels max to accumulate enough data for our acquisition efforts. So if you're a broad consumer app, that'll probably be like, Facebook or Google. If you're a niche product app, maybe that'll be like a product hunt or a sponsored newsletter, for example. The idea is we want to start with the channel that's going to provide us with the most qualified, highest intent users. So if we can't get these individuals to work from a profitability perspective, the chances are that paid acquisition isn't quite ready yet. And if we can't get those individuals to work, then so the idea is we want to show, this could be an example of search users. So people who have high intent to use your product. It could be lookalikes on the social platforms. We want to show success with these individuals. And if you're going with a lookalike audience when you first start your campaign, you'll be able to provide some data to the Facebooks of the world and get some data on those individuals within the platform and start to train their algorithms in terms of who the most ideal consumer is for your product. A lookalike could be an existing, high-value user list that you have of your within your product already. So that could be that. And then once you start from there with your highest intent users, then you can trade that intent for scale. So this could be from interest-based targeting within Facebook, and eventually you move to more of like the broad targeting. So for the metrics to be observing within the campaigns when you first start up a paid acquisition program is we obviously want to think about the levers that can improve performance. So this is very dependent on the platform. So some of the more common, I guess, metrics or levers that we have that can improve performance will be kind of based on creative. So creative can include things like CTR, so click-through rates. It can include things like IPMs, so installs per impression. And then other kind of levers that you have to improve performance can be things such as bid optimization events. So are you bidding for something that's a mid-funnel event? Are you bidding for something that's the bottom of the funnel? The other parts that can affect performance could be the audience selections, which we've kind of discussed already. One thing here is always good to start to think about a systematic way to test some of these elements. So I always like to focus on the elements that will have the biggest impact in terms of our metrics, figure out the best way to test all those ones that are going to have the biggest impact, and then move on to the next biggest opportunity in terms of impact. And then, obviously you can come back at a later points and test those original kind of areas of focus to see if you can have some incremental gains with conversion rates or whatever the case may be.
So things you can do now or yesterday, as we like to call them. So again, this is a page that people are welcome to screenshot, because a lot of the time people ask us, what can we just do now? And these are some simple things that at any stage you can start to do. So from a paid perspective, you can research your competitors' current ads and initiatives. It's a very, very simple thing that you can do to stay on top of your game and see what kind of creative approach maybe even some of your competitors have. Do your competitors have anything in common? Is that an angle that you yourself can take when it comes to your paid campaigns? Second of all, organic. So something you can do on organic is spend personal time browsing social media. It's very simple, but you would be amazed how many founders don't necessarily spend a lot of time on social media, outside of their own circle. Are you browsing through your competitors and seeing the content that they post daily? Are you following them? Are you familiar with trends that are popping up? If you're someone that doesn't like social media, that's okay. If you can allot just 10 minutes of your time a day to scroll through TikTok or scroll through Instagram, and just make sure that you're regular there, that can go a very long way. Another paid aspect here, observe where your competitors are advertising via ad libraries. So, Kevin, I don't know if you want to speak to this a little bit more because this was something that you suggested.
Yeah, the idea here is if you see competitors advertising in specific areas or specific platforms and continue to do so on a continuous basis, the chances are they're probably finding success there. And then, potentially you may be able to find some success there as well.
Definitely, definitely. And lastly, another organic thing that you can do now, note what aspect of your brand is actually interesting to people. Is there something about, your brand tone of voice or your product that the everyman can benefit from? Something that would have them revisit your pages. Maybe you provide a certain value, a certain education, maybe even a sense of humor. It's really important to kind of write this down and think about all the ways that your brand could be interesting to people. So these are just a couple of the things that you should have done yesterday. And that is it from us. So we just want to say thank you to everybody that has joined today. And also thank you to Amanda and those at Sputnik. We'd love to open the floor up to any questions.
All right, so put your questions down below and we'll be feeding them to Christina and Kevin. In the meantime, Kevin, I think it's interesting that you started in finance and you taught yourself this. So are there any like resources that you would recommend to people that don't come from a marketing background to kind of educate themselves?
Yeah, for sure. I guess there's a lot of Slack channels out there and then blogs. So Christina and myself worked with kind of, I guess, one of the, thought leaders of the advertising space. His name is Eric Seifert. He has a Slack channel called Mobile Dev Memo, as well as a mobile newsletter that he kind of just provides a lot of kind of thoughts around where the industry is headed and how to kind of position yourself, going forward.
Awesome. So we have some questions coming in. George asked, do you have any thoughts on which types of content perform best for engaging B2B SaaS clients, like blogs, case studies, webinars, etc.?
My experience has been primarily on the B2C. I've done a little bit on B2B, so I may not be the best person. I probably should have started kind of just with my kind of current work responsibilities, but I kind of work on here at Newsbreak. We are a news app. My responsibility is a little bit on the consumer side, so getting individuals to download and engage with our news app, and then a little bit of my time is focused on advertiser growth for our ad platform. So that's a little bit more of a B2B offering, where we've kind of seen more of the success for that has been a lot of definitely on the referrals piece, because we are like a newer platform, but also running through paid campaigns on LinkedIn to get individuals to sign up for a webinar, to answer some of these questions, provide and showcase some of the features of the platform, those type of things. That's kind of just where we've seen more of the success.
Awesome. Then Dennis asked, let's see, what are your thoughts on using the same or similar content on multiple channels?
I can take this one. So this one's quite tempting for a lot of people because, you know, it's easy to put the same content on different channels. And to a degree, you can do this. But one of the things that I think is really important about different social channels is ensuring that it's native to that channel. So for example, let's say that you have a video that you made, you know, for Instagram or for Reels, then it's likely that you use the Reels font, you know, if there was any text over it. I would say that it's important that when you take that video to TikTok, that you make sure you're using the TikTok font. It's such a simple thing, but people can recognize on TikTok if something is straight from Instagram and vice versa. And it's really important that you can just gauge people's attention immediately. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having similar content on multiple platforms, but you know, there's a place for everything. And if you can tweak them so that they can be as native as possible, then I think it's a lot easier to track their performance.
Great. Mina asked, there are so many social media outlets. Where should we start? I think this is especially interesting as like ones like Twitter is experiencing changes. So how do you think about that?
I mean, so it's a great question. You know, I think that it really just depends on what your goals might be, you know. And I think that if it's about just brand awareness and reputation, I would personally stick to Instagram, because Instagram, you know, is kind of like the new website. You know, if you're going to go and look to go eat at a restaurant, you might not look up the website anymore. You'll go on their Instagram and see what food they have available. You know, it's like where you check a brand out. So I think that just as a landscape for brand reputation, Instagram is a good place. If you want, you know, high growth, you know, quick growth, TikTok is a fantastic place to start. But I think that it's important that you can try a little bit, you know, on all of these, you know, YouTube as well. It depends as well on the kind of content that you have at hand that's readily available. If you have longer form videos, then it might be very easy for you to start on YouTube or to start posting them on LinkedIn, or if you have longer form content in general. So I would say maybe even make a list of the kind of content you already have in front of you. And sometimes that's an easier way for you to understand what social platform you should start with first.
Great. All right. Let's see. We have another person interested in B2B. Do you have any experience with B2B products that might tweak your ideas, or any experience with using YouTube ads?
Yeah, I have used YouTube ads. This does well with kind of just the kind of custom audiences that you create within the platform. You could always kind of use some of the in-market audiences as well. But I would always try to kind of create more of the focused or narrow audiences. So I guess more of the standard, I guess, ways to create those audiences could be just lookalikes of competitors, websites, competitors' apps, those type of things, or, you know, interacted with specific keywords. So I think this would probably just be like the starting point of, you know, creating the audience segmentations and seeing what works.
And how, I think you guys touched on this a little bit with no budget and low budget, but someone is asking, how do I do all of this as a solopreneur? I can't hire anyone yet.
Well, I can take some of this, Kevin. I think that try not to overwhelm yourself. Just because you have a lot of advice in front of you, or there are a lot of things that you can do on your own, it doesn't mean that you have to do them all in one day. You know, if you're a solo, entrepreneur or a solopreneur, I think these people are quite good at time management and taking, you know, their daily tasks. And I think all that you need to do is just start to introduce, you know, a little bit of marketing into the everyday where you can, that's reasonable, because it will be a learning curve for you too. As long as it's consistent, that is key. And, you know, as you grow in that respect, you'll understand what next steps you can take, you know, where you want to invest either more time or money in. As long as you're practicing it regularly, that is the most important thing. We would never expect someone to do everything all in one day.
All right. Victor, if you can clarify your thing about travel marketplaces, if you want that question answered. Oksana asked, who do you follow and what do you read to get good at this game? Where do you start if you're a founder who's never done marketing? I think you kind of touched on that. So yeah, what are you reading and how do you get good?
Oh, Kevin, do you want to go first? Or do you...
Yeah, for me, I subscribe to, I guess, a couple newsletters. So Eric's being one of them. The other one is more of like an industry-wide newsletter, which is the grow.co newsletter. So this is kind of like everything growth. So it's for mobile as well as web properties.
That's Growth Co, you said?
Grow.co.
Grow.co. Okay.
Yeah, that one, they just had a conference last week, which is pretty, I guess, probably one of the bigger conferences for any type of people in growth, especially if they have a mobile app. Yeah.
For me, I love a podcast. My favorite podcast for this is How I Built This with Guy Raz, which is on NPR, but I think it's on Spotify, and people here have probably listened to that. But one of the things that has been helpful for me is finding brands on there or founders that I really align with and listening to their stories, not more than once. It's always so interesting for me to learn from people's personal experiences. And another thing that's really important, it might not be something you read, but building relationships, with other founders and entrepreneurs and people in various industries is a really good way of learning about marketing. If you're not familiar with it, having access to a community, whether it's a Slack channel or it's it's just a group chat, or just having a friend that you've met at a conference sometime, that is definitely a really good door to have open.
Awesome. And I think our last question is, how do you determine when a channel is no longer viable to put spend behind?
For this, I'd probably say if you've kind of exhausted all the levers that I kind of mentioned earlier. So if you feel like you've exhausted, done testing around creative, if you've done testing around event optimization, you've done testing around audiences, you haven't seen any success with that, or you've seen declining success, depending on those metrics, you may be saturating that platform, or it wasn't a platform that's a viable option for your product. Yeah.
Cool. And fake out, there was one more. Do you have a sense about how important Product Hunt and G2 are for mobile apps and SaaS products?
I've only worked with one product for Product Hunt, so may not be the best person. But I've seen kind of some of the early success there with the product that was listed there. Again, I think it's probably a good option, again, if you have more of the niche product or early stage product. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, one of our companies, Product Hunt was a good launch pad for them, but it's like a burst. It's not a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I recommend going back because we gave you guys, people listening, a lot of information. So this is going to live on our LinkedIn and our YouTube. You can always go check it out again there. And let us know if you have any questions. And thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.